morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our speakers, chairs, and the wonderful audiences in different parts of the world. Welcome back to ACNS webinars. The speaker for the first session of today is our honorable guest from Japan, Professor Yaki Tokunabu. Professor Tokunabu is an associate professor, currently chief scientist at Waseda University, Japan. He was a former division director and chief scientist at the EBM Corporation, Japan. He is an expert in the fluid dynamics and its medical applications such as intracranial aneurysms. Up to now, over last 1 decade, he has led the study for intracranial aneurysm pathology with human samples and animal experiment, with a strong interest in the relation with biomechanical environment. We are extremely honored to have him today at webinars, and today we'll be talking about CFD and aneurysms, a review and future directions. The speaker for the second session of today is our honored guest from Alexandria, Egypt, Professor Tamer Hassan. Professor Hassan is a professor and director of vascular neurosurgery unit at the Department of Neurosurgery, Alexandria University, Egypt. He is also the director of Research Center for Computational Neurovascular Biomechanics at the Samoa University Hospitals. He is also a Japanese board certified neurosurgeon, and we are extremely honored to have him today at webinars. And today we'll be talking about a very interesting topic, which is brain aneurysms, choosing between coiling and clipping in 2023. The chair for the first session of today's webinar is our honored guest from Toronto, Canada, Professor Timo Krings. Professor Krings is the professor of radiology and surgery and the chief of radiology at the Toronto Western Hospital and the head of division of diagnostic and neurointervention neuroradiology at the University Health Network, Mount Sinai, and Women's College Hospitals. He holds the David Bradley and Nancy Gordon Chair in Intervention Neuroradiology at the University of Toronto. Focusing his research efforts on imaging and treatment of neurovascular diseases, Dr. Krings has published more than 420 peer-reviewed articles and approximately 30 book chapters and 4 books on spinal, pediatric, and intervention neuroradiology and neurovascular anatomy. His leadership in the field of neuroradiology is bolstered by his distinguished grants and award, including Scientific Award of the European Society of Neuroradiology, the Lucien Apple Award, and the Founders Award in Intervention Neuroradiology of the ESNR. We are extremely grateful to him for accepting our invitation to chair the first session of today's webinar. The chair for the second session of today's webinar is our honorable guest from the United Kingdom, Professor Mario Teo. Professor Teo is a consultant neurosurgeon and honorary senior clinical lecturer at the Bristol Institute of Clinical Neurosciences, North Bristol University Hospital. He has completed a cerebrovascular and skull-based fellowship for the Stanford University, California, USA, and he has special interest in minimal invasive cranial and spine surgery. His clinical interest is focused on the management of complex brain tumors and cerebrovascular pathologies like moya, cerebral aneurysms, AVMs, cavernomas, and hemangioblastomas. He is a noted author who has several peer-reviewed publications, editorials, and book chapters, and also an advocate of collaborative clinical and scientific research at local, national, and international levels. We are extremely grateful to him for accepting our invitation to chair the second session of today's webinar. On behalf of the Education Committee of the ACNS and the President, Professor Yoko Kaito, I would like to welcome both the speakers and chairs to this online platform of ACNS webinars. A very warm welcome to our colleagues in China, and we are extremely grateful to Professor Shubin for broadcasting this webinar on the WeChat channel. Dr. Liu Bun Seng from Malaysia is my co-host for today. And with that introduction, I would like to hand over this online podium to our first chair, Professor Timo Krings.
Thank you very much, Professor Krishna Kuti, for this excellent introduction. I can't speak as fast as you, obviously, but I would like to thank you for all of the hard work that you put into the organization. We just chatted before. You've done over the last 2 years more than 600 of these webinars, and I think this is absolutely incredible. So there's at least one good thing that came out of COVID, and this is the amazing education that you are providing for the ACNS here. So thank you very much to you. Thank you very much to Professor Kato for chairing this endeavor and for making it actually possible to bring world experts from all over the place together to share their knowledge and to have each other learn from each other, which is truly amazing. And I think this international collaboration is what we all need in these difficult times. I think it is also time now to thank the speakers to take so much time out of their very busy schedule to educate us. So thank you very much to Professor Tokunabu and Professor Hassan, and they are true international experts in their respective fields, and I'm looking very much forward to their lectures. Now, it's my pleasure now to chair the first session, and this is on computational fluid dynamics. the review of the current state and the future directions. And I've been involved in computational fluid dynamics as well for some time. And in the past, we were always joking that CFD, computational fluid dynamics, stands for color for doctors, because they make like nice pictures, but do they really mean something? And I think what you will hear now is that they do mean a lot. In fact, we have learned over the last couple of years that aneurysms not only grow because of hemodynamics, but that inflammatory changes within the vessel wall are very important. But the hemodynamics can actually govern the inflammatory changes, because we have seen that hemodynamics, i.e. fluid shear stress forces on the endothelium, can lead to an epigenetic up or down regulation of pro and anti-inflammatory genes that then will lead to the likelihood of aneurysms formation, growth, and rupture. And therefore, we are currently seeing a true renaissance of computational fluid dynamics, as these types of techniques may actually tell us which aneurysm, unruptured aneurysm, is more prone to rupture and which aneurysm may actually stay stable. And this will be extremely important for us as practitioners, whether we go for clipping versus coiling, which will obviously then be the second talk of the day. So without further ado, it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce Professor Tukanobu, who will speak about CFD, computational fluid dynamics, review and future directions. Professor Tukanobu.
All right. I hope you listen to me so very well. I'd like to start my presentation under the title of the CFD intracranial aneurysm review and future directions. Actually, I am an engineer involving it, sort of that finding that underlying mechanism of the mechanics and the pathology so far, so about 1 decade. So I like to start some, this presentation is a very simplified, but very more practical way for the practitioners like you and what we have so far, okay? All right, so the contents of my presentation is 3 parts. First part is about the recent review of CFD, and especially the more clinical events like rupture or growth or endovascular outcomes and so on. And second part is about the linkage of hemodynamics and the wall heterogeneities, which meaning like translucent or non-translucent walls you see in the clipping, how these heterogeneities are related with hemodynamics. And the third part is a bit tricky. Been doing the mechanopathology research in so far, and I possibly that say something new for underlying mechanism of the mechanopathology of aneurysm, which is about the research of myself. So the second, first and second part is, I think that it's not so difficult to understand, but the third part is a bit tricky, a bit complicated. So save your energy until to the second half, okay? All right, so let me introduce very simplified way. Aneurysmal morphology is not equal to the aneurysmal hemodynamics. I put some 6 cases, size about 5 to 7 millimeter in size, and the top 3 parts are that we call the high flow. High flow meaning the red color meaning that the higher velocity or the higher amount of flow rate from parent artery to aneurysm. These kind of circumstances we call the high flow. And the bottom 3 cases are representative of the low flow cases. The color inside the aneurysm is even more blue, which means the lower velocity. And the amount of flow rate from the parent artery is less enter to the aneurysm, okay? So we now know that morphology, similar morphologies in size, but the different hemodynamics, which means that how it's related with the clinical outcome. This is the issue we've been faced so far. And I put some, did a study of about 200 cases, the unruptured intracranial aneurysm, and I plotted the x-axis as the amount of flow rate, okay, amount of flow rate. 0.2 means that about 20% of a parent artery flow rate get insight into the aneurysm, okay? And the y-axis is just about volume. And the clinical guideline says that in Japan, the 5 to 7 millimeter is the typical borderline to judge either treat or non-treat. So I put some line on it. And what I'd like to emphasize out of this picture is that see some small size of aneurysm. See, less than 5 to 7 millimeter, but totally different hemodynamics. Something about only 20%, something about 100%. So that amount of flow is different, and actually that much less correlated with the morphology. Okay. So I picked up that good CFD papers, and the ruptured case identification, growth case identification, and also endovascular treatment outcomes like coil recanalization, flow diverter, low occlusion, web compressions, and these topics indicated that these clinical events are related with higher flow significantly. Okay. So I pick it up one by one. And this research is done by Florence Brau's big team. And they published a number of papers, and he finally did this good study about almost 2,000 cases of aneurysm and rupture with the dispute. Aneurysm rupture status included aneurysm location, mean surface curvature, and maximum flow velocity. So they say that a higher amount of velocities are finally well correlated with the rupture status. Okay, high flow. And this study is from at the Kyoto University, Professor Kataoka, and that they compared the growth case in middle cerebral artery bifurcation, and one with growth, one without growth. And this study is not nothing that they followed at the longitudinal study. It's about 2 years and about 100 cases. And they found that the growth are correlated, associated with higher flow rate. Okay. ARC here means that the high amount of flow rate are significant independent predictors of the growth of MCA aneurysm. Okay. And this is a typical example of the lower flow rate case. This is a typical higher flow rate case. So they observed higher flow cases are associated with growth eventually. Okay. So the two papers, different topics, rupture or growth, but both are related with a higher velocity or higher amount of flow rate. Okay. So now the time to the endovascular treatment. First about the coil recanalization. This is also from the Japanese study. They compared 60 aneurysm, and they found that like a low flow case, high flow case. High flow case is that associated with they actually pick up the basilar tip aneurysm, and in that aneurysm, recanalizations are associated with higher flow rate. Okay. So the second topic about endovascular treatments about the flow diverters. This case is that they put some numerically the flow diverter into this kind of computer simulation and compared before and after what is the hemodynamic environment changed, and they found flow velocity, higher velocity meaning lower occlusion, like this before, this after. So that this case is also similar to the previous coil recanalization and lower occlusion in terms of the hemodynamics. And this is another case of endovascular treatment using the web. And they compared about 20 cases with web. Web is just middle cerebral artery and the basilar tip artery. And they found that web compression is a case at the higher flow rate, area under cover 0.83, which is moderately good. So that so far I picked up that rupture and growth and endovascular coil recanalization and flow diverter, low occlusion, and the wave compression are, as significantly associated with higher flow conditions. Okay, higher velocity or higher flow rate. So after this finding that the correlation between the clinical event and the hemodynamics, what we are going to is that what is the underlying mechanism. So higher flow means what? And this is a big issue. And first of all, I like to summarize that some of the studies of flow impingement at the translucent tissues. Okay. So before that, I like to explain what is the flow impingement. This is one case. We visualize flow with streamlines. The color is colored by the velocity, and colored by pressure, colored by wall shear stress, and wall shear directions. So we are looking at the impingement right here. And out of the streamlines, we see that the impingement visually going like this, and diverse going this way. Okay. And this location exposes the higher pressure, a little bit higher pressure. But this is that the pressure elevation is only 1 to 2% for the blood pressure, but a little bit higher pressure. Okay. And the higher wall shear stress magnitude right here. And this diverse type of wall shear stress directions. So that the impingement is a very, very unique flow patterns, and depending on the streamlines of pressure or wall shear stress magnitude or directions, various ways of quantifying the magnitude of impingement. Okay. So that I like to introduce some my case. Actually, that this data is a bit old. So that we about collected the 23 unruptured aneurysm from MCA, ICPC, or all sorts of things. We are interested in that this translucent part, and non-translucent. How this wall heterogeneity is associated with hemodynamics. This that time our major concern, major topic. Okay. So that classification of the flow, as I said, that the flow is there are not the unique way to describe the flow. It's a lot of ways. So that time we choose that I rather this pattern of the direction of the wall shear vectors directions. So we classify the flow morphologically, either into parallel flow, like a margin flow, margin flow, and a rotating flow somewhere is not a picture, rotating flow, and divergent flow, divergent place. So the divergence meaning that the flow impingement. And we did some numerical analysis, and that we counted some divergent magnitude, and we compared this magnitude with translucent or non-translucent type thing. So that what we found is that the very clear result we found that time. Left-hand side is that the impingement, like full divergent, direct impingement, okay, direct impingement. And the second one is that inclined impingement. The wall is inclined, so it's a partial divergent, okay. And the right-hand side is the margin flow. The margin flow is creating the flow stasis, and the rotational flow is as well. So that color meaning red color meaning translucent wall, gray color means hypertrophic white wall in the surgical video, and the atherosclerotic ones is colored by yellow one. Okay. So that left-hand side is flow impingement, either full or partial, are much related with the translucent wall, not atherosclerotic one. Okay. And right-hand side is margin rotational is what we call flow stasis. are related with hypertrophic or either atherosclerosis, nothing with translucent. So these results let us to understand that impingement are related with wall thinning, and flow stasis are related with thickening. Okay. So there are at least 5 to 6 studies, to my knowledge, they find out that wall heterogeneity is with fluid dynamics. And one papers I like to explain, which is from the GK University in Japan. They did the fluid dynamics and CFD, and they rather used the pressure elevation. And the pressure elevation and compared with the operative views. And the pressure elevation, meaning that the flow impingement are correlated with wall thinning about with this value. Okay, so there are a bunch of papers using the different type of numerical definition of the flow impingement, but eventually meaning like flow impingement are related with wall thinning. But at this moment, we have no idea why. So, I been doing so far, very, very basic study. So this we are facing the third part of this my presentation, and higher flow means what? This is the second topic, and the flow impingement are associated with the translucent region, translucent tissues. So that here that flow impingement, this is non-impingement region. And first of all, this is a bit complicated, so I like to share with you that what we found so far, and make it graphically and let you to understand more easier way. So we like to say that flow impingement prevents microscopic repair, which meaning thrombus. Okay, prevent thrombus upon microscopic injury. Injury means tear, microscopic tear. Okay, so that the point is there are like aneurysm going like this, and the flow impinged, and the wall is exposed to the blood pressure, and the wall thickness, small thickness or large thickness is depending on the thickness. This is a mathematical formula. This is the pressure. This is geometry radius. This is the thickness. This is the wall stress. So that the pressure creating the wall stress inside the aneurysmal wall, which is not associated with the hemodynamics. This is purely structural manner. Blood pressure creating the wall stress, sigma, okay? So that the thinner wall and the thicker wall meaning that the T thickness is small. Thicker wall, T thickness is large. So that we assume that the blood pressure same, radius same, so that the sigma is here, higher, elevated. And here is the thicker thickness, meaning that the lower wall stress. Okay, and we did the transmission electron micrograph study so far, and we found that this thin wall is made up of the necrotic monolayers. Here that the smooth muscle cells death entirely as apoptosis, which I introduced later on. And the thick wall include proliferating multi-layer, proliferating layer, sorry, as a part of thrombus upon this layer. And so the thick walls at least included self-alive layer. And the thin wall is mono layer and totally self-death. And as I said, impingements are related with thin, non-impingement related with thick. And this is seemingly related with flow is microscopic repair, not injury. Okay, so far that hemodynamics being believed as injury, primary injury, like endothelial cell, macrophage, all sorts of things are related with that hemodynamics, and the hemodynamics are believed to be a primary injury source. But out of our cases, not. Injuries are possibly related with pressure. Pressure more directly say that the high wall stress inside. Okay. So that I like to share that thickness-dependent root structure. This is a classification we finally utilized, and we did some TEM analysis, and then depending on the TEM analysis, that we found that the aneurysm wall is created by several layers. So layers by layers, we classify. Something like first layer is a migratory layer, which meaning that the scattered active smooth muscle cells, a number of cell deaths, and platelet, fibrin, monocyte, macrophage, neutrophil sometimes. And these layers, composed of basically the basement membrane like this. And collagen, like elastic fibers, very small, almost nothing. Okay, migratory layer. And the second layer is a proliferative layer, area or rate, depending on the cell density or the collagen density. Eventually, that this layer is a high density multi-directional smooth muscle cells, multi-directional. Okay. And unlike the migratory cell layer, this layer is composed of dense collagenous fibrils. Okay. And the elastic fibrils also produced. And the third one is necrotic layer. Okay. Necrotic layer is a very interesting phenomenon we found. Those cells, smooth muscle cells, are unidirectionally stretched and showed necrosis. Here that meaning the necrosis, I did explain later on, but necrotic smooth muscle cells. And the dense is similar, dense collagenous fibrils, and the elastic fibrils disappear. And this layer, only this layer has pore. Pore meaning like a part of cell death creating the inside of the pore of the vascular wall. And the pore is connected, creating the cavity. And these cavities, even that, getting worse into become a tear. Okay. So that, first of all, like to explain the definition of the necrosis here. I utilized this very famous journal, and this journal defined that cell death either oncosis or the apoptosis before cell death, and after cell death, they say that these oncosis in becoming the necrosis or apoptosis becoming the necrosis. So that there are two routes, oncosis and apoptosis, and eventually that they classify. And I know that the cell death words is very, very actively growing, and there are a number of definitions. So here, just simply like to me simplify saying that necrosis is just a matter of the cell death, okay, after cell death. So that also that we collected the information in the endothelial cells, some things are endothelialized, like beautifully like here. And some things without endothelial cells exposed directly to the blood lumen. Here the lumen, and this is the basal membrane, and the small platelet or small thrombi typically exists. And also that without even membrane, like cells is completely disrupted. Okay. So that we classified that the wall conditions and their adventure, including adventure, with without inflammatory cell, depending on the layer, and also the endothelial cells and the basement membrane. Okay. So that I like to summarize some this seven cases, and here that this is the case we harvested and we investigated with TEM and colored by like this, and this is the break, and this is the migratory layer, proliferative layer, and the necrotic layer. And here is also the translucent case and entirely necrotic layer. Here is the entire necrotic layer. Here is also the entire necrotic layer aligned with this proliferating layer, which means like here, white colored. And this case is this bit translucent case, translucent part is very thin, entire necrotic layer and aligned with surrounding this hyperplastic region with more like a green proliferating layer. Here the case is a more thicker case, is multi-laminated, various layers. And first thing that I like to say is that I plotted that this case is in the order of wall thickness. And here that very, very small thickness aneurysmal wall, translucent wall, about thickness about 50 micrometer, less than, which is entirely made up of necrotic monolayer. Okay, and the thicker part is the various colors, which meaning the multi-layer, meaning that the migratory, proliferating, and necrotic layer is layer by layer. Okay, and also sometimes that this wall thickness three-dimensionally we investigated with micro CT. Here that very thin wall is the red colors, and the thicker wall is a sharp focal wall thickness. And the intermediate region is like a multiple dot of thin, thick, probably that the competitive balance of the injury and repair. Okay. So what these studies, our studies result meaning, this is a big issue I've been faced. I like to review that pathological studies being done for the last almost 2 decades, mainly the Finnish samples. Finnish study, they classified like as a wall is, sorry, I mean university. So Finnish study, they classified the aneurysmal wall into 4 types, A, B, C, D. And they say that the A, B, C, D type is thin, and D type is thin. And A to B is the smooth muscle is active. C type is smooth muscle cells is negative. And they are correlated with the thrombus. This is without thrombus, intact endothelial cells. This is with thrombus. This is with thrombus. This is with thrombus. And most interestingly, like D type 1, very small wall with thrombus layer is 100% in rupture, nothing in unrupture. So we found that actually that so far very small necrotic wall layer, which is completely cell death of unidirectionally aligned smooth muscle cell died entirely. But these kind of layers not being published so far, and this is kind of like a big issue I have. That what they published a bunch of stuff papers, and they say that aneurysmal wall is the flow induced inflammation mediated wall remodeling in that both formation and progressions. And typically, for the sake of time, I don't talk about the initiation. I just, focus on the progression in this presentation so that let me explain about this part. They actually that luminal thrombus is like this one, luminal thrombus. Luminal thrombus is a cause of cell death, either from oxidative stress or proteolysis. So the thrombus is being thought as as a bad stuff, creating the cell death, and out of cell death, the loss of smooth muscle death. So this is what they saying. So what we don't know is that previously that the cell death layer is always, they say the type D, luminal thrombus is top of the smooth necrotic layer. But we found necrotic layer without thrombus. So, that which is cause or which is the result, we have no idea. Just simply I like to say that what if thin decellularized wall exists without luminal thrombus? And they say that luminal thrombus is associated with smooth muscle cell, necrotic layer and a cause, and this is the result. Because of the luminal thrombus, including the lot of inflammatory cells and oxidative stress and so on, they say. And our point of view, biomechanical point of view, is that this layer is more like a destructive. Upon destruction, luminal thrombus are created. But the way you created the luminal thrombus depends on the hemodynamics, either impingement or non-impingement. These things are what we've been thinking currently. So that unfortunately, I don't rather meaning like this kind of result, but that there are a bunch of contradictions with previous theory hemodynamics. Let's say, where are the endothelial cells? Yes, endothelial cells, what we found is that this has endothelial cells, this has endothelial cells, this has endothelial cells. That's it. Other site, other location, didn't have any endothelial cells. So that so far, high voltage stress endothelial cells macrophage canalic interactions being thought to involve in that, remodeling with the aneurysm, but our data didn't say like that. And the probability endothelialization out of our data is that 10 is about location specifically 15% of location are covered by endothelial cells. Cases specifically only 30%. And so far, the earliest study done by Professor Kataoka, they said that 70% ruptures are covered by endothelial cells. And first study from the finished samples, they say the similar percent, 70%. And the third study, this is also from the finished study, they only observed 40% are related with the endothelial cells. So that the role of endothelial cells, so far, about 2 decades, is believed to be covered with a nice endothelial cells, but eventually, we don't think so. And we think that this is not endothelial cells derived, stuff like that. Okay. And also that macrophages, yes, a lot of macrophages exist. Location specifically 40%, cases specifically 80, almost 85%. But the location of layer. This is a layer by layer structure. So this is a migratory layer and the shadow, thick shadow meaning the higher amount of macrophage or inflammatory cells. And this thin shadow is a proliferative layer with moderate number of monocyte here. And here is nothing. This is a lumen. And here is a macrophage, number of macrophages that are right here. And the rest are nothing. And this is different cases. This is lumen, thrombus is disrupted. And here that proliferate aggregation. And around that, a lot of macrophages. And the similar thing, a lot of macrophage. These cases only, the layer close to the lumen. So this is a part of like a destruction vascular wall, okay, as a sort of the thrombus. And deeper layer like this, deeper layer more like elongated, like a layer is macrophage doesn't exist. Okay. So another contradiction. Previous theory, they say that finished samples, they say that repeat and the oxidation associated with wall degeneration and layer, repeat layer, and droplet type, and spread type, and even that repeat Radin, smooth cells they report. However, out of our data, we investigated very thoroughly manner using TEM, and repeat Radin smooth muscle cells is very rare. I couldn't count about the percentage, but definitely less than 1%. It's very hard to find out. So that these kind of things is typically macrophage engulfed that repeat. However, not smooth muscle cells, and so that lipid laden is even lipid laden as itself is we are not sure that this is truly contributing to this aneurysm stuff. But you know that the Finnish and the Japanese sample is made quite different as far as the rupture rate is concerned. So that we are very stage at a very early stage to decide which is good, which is bad. But our data say that lipid laden is not associated with the wall degeneration. So that proposed theory out of our data. First of all, I like to say that what is that injury? So that the thin wall, this is 50 micron. So the thin wall, and we see that see cavity. Cavity means like this pore. Pore, I define that cell death and creating the pore. And the pore itself is elongated and merged and bigger pore. I say that cavity. And another cavity and thinner wall has a very big tear. And this is how that the wall is going degenerated. Okay. See some of the tear, and a lot of cell death. And cell death, there are two types, obviously, oncosis, which meaning that cytoplasmic degeneration, or either the apoptic type. And this kind of cell death is majorities are related with apoptosis type. So that aneurysmal wall injury originally from the smooth muscle cell death, which is also that the Finnish samples, they say the same thing, but which leaves multiple pores inside the wall. So the porous media, porous layer. So extending to the cavities and tear and the internal collapse due to the cell death cluster, massive cell death. This is a cause, we believe. And the cell death are least oncosis apoptosis. So that the oncosis we currently characterize at the innermost layer. Apoptosis was the outermost layer, which meaning that the older layer, more experience of the strong stretch, okay? Strong stretch. And these cell deaths directly or indirectly associated with the wall stress, especially the mechanical stretch, because that unidirectionally, very elongated. Okay. So that what is the repair? Repair is the mother of the thrombus, but thrombus is that the linked with hemodynamics. This is a case, translucent pattern, and we observe that using the same scanning electron microscope with totally nothing of the thrombus, with fibrin, with platelet, with fibrin. So that thrombus repair is depending on that kind of environment, especially the hemodynamic environment. Okay. And remember that impingement are related with the translucent and the non-stasis related with hyperplastic and extrusive wall thickening. Okay. So little bit busy slide. Probably the remodeling looks like this. We eventually reached after about 10 years, research, and this is vascular mechanics is deeply associated with this injury. And first of all, like strain induced, which means strain meaning the blood pressure. Blood pressure created the wall stress or strain. Strain induced injury and flow mediated repair. So that the higher amount of wall stress is created with cell death, elongate, and at certain point of time, over time, and creating cavity and tear, and more exposed to that repair. But the repair itself is associated with flow. Higher flow or like an impingement flow, or lower flow, like a stasis flow. Luminal thrombus is gathered only in the low flow, not in high flow. This is how these kind of high wall stress strain or cell death and with impingement flow, and they eventually going only to that wall thinning remodeling. Or either low flow is multiple layered, and the multiple layer depending on the conditions that they turning into that smooth muscles that proliferative layers. Okay. So this is the last slide. I just put a summary. High flows are associated with vascular clinical events such as a rupture and growth, as well as endovascular treatment outcomes, lead canalization, flow diverter, low occlusion, like wave compression type. All these clinical events seemingly associated with higher flow. Okay. So what is a higher flow meaning is that this is a big issue, and out of our data, higher flow doesn't mean like endothelial or inflammatory cells type of so far believed phenomena. I believe that higher flow meaning like a prevention of thrombus, like the vascular repair upon vascular injury. So what is the injury? Injury is not directed with hemodynamics, rather with aneurysmal wall stress or blood pressure. Higher wall stress induces muscle cell death. You know that if you are familiar with that, in vitro culture, like smooth muscle cells is very well known to show that massive apoptosis in the higher amount of stretch. So stretch-induced apoptosis is a very well-known typical word in the in vitro culture, the world study. Okay. So that this kind of things is a major cause of aneurysmal wall destruction. In our data set, we have no result favorable with so-called flow-induced inflammatory mediated remodeling. But you know that a lot of contradiction possibly still meaning like could be affected by the population difference. Okay, Finnish and Japanese. So we are too early at this moment to comprehend understanding of the aneurysm. But at least for the future, possibly better to compare between population difference. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very comprehensive and very well researched presentation. I'm quite impressed, and I learned a lot from your presentation. I'm intrigued by the differences between the Japanese and the Finnish and like other population, North American, European, Caucasian type of populations. So is it your opinion that in these types of different populations, we have different forms of epigenetic up or down regulation related to the same phenomenon, i.e. related to the same high flow shear stress? Different populations react differently?
Yes, basically that Finnish sample, they did quite in-depth study of pathology, and not much about between pathology and hemodynamics, which is actually very rare. So that a linkage of pathology and hemodynamics is just began, I believe. But as far as the pathology is concerned, and the Finnish samples, our samples, I am quite confident, different. And one of the doctors, he graduated from our laboratory. He now is working with the United States. Their samples is also sometimes they say that the classification type of things they observe quite frequently. But in our sample, in Japanese sample, it's very rare. So I gradually thinking that the aneurysmal pathology is a pretty neat or population different.
And I also think that what we are calling an aneurysm may actually be the phenotypic expression of completely different diseases. We do know that dissecting aneurysms are completely different from secular aneurysms. And maybe even within the so-called classical secular aneurysms, there are different types. I mean, we see it with the blister type aneurysms where the wall is paper thin. Something must be going on there. Did you do any type of evaluations for blister type aneurysms, or did you only look at secular aneurysms?
Blister, no. So far, no. Yeah.
I will continue asking questions, but I will also tell the audience, if you have questions, please put them into the chat and I will be able to read them out to our distinguished speaker. Yes, I do see there's a question from Professor Hassan. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for this interesting lecture. You know, after the aneurysm is formed, the aneurysm starts its shape to change, like what Dr. Pring said. So you have a multilobulated aneurysm in some situations, and you have a one lobule of the aneurysm, and you have a dissection and so on. So I believe that if you have an aneurysm, it's a high shear stress phenomena or high velocity phenomena at the beginning. But once the aneurysm is formed and it starts to be lobulated, and of course, this is related to the anatomy around the aneurysm, the presence of tenturium, the presence of thick arachnoid, the presence of other vessels, and so on. There is a start to change of the intra-aneurysmal flow analysis, and you have a multiple areas. There is an area of high flow, there's an area of low flow, and I don't think that in respect to the other literature, that rupture is always related to high flow velocity phenomena, because we have a lot of papers, even from Japan, from Dr. Tatashima. It's a very old paper about the rupture associated with low shear stress phenomena. So I believe that you have read all of these papers. So do you have a clue or a quantitative parameter today and that can tell us which aneurysm is going to rupture or not?
Okay. Say before breving and after breving, let's say we assume, and that second barraging created the low flow conditions definitely before second barraging. So that if we compare that flow, what I'm saying that like this shape and higher flow, whatever the higher flow, preventing the repair and let it go, and the wall is thinning, and at certain point of time, it's secondary barraged because the wall is failed. Then hemodynamics is changed back to the low flow. So that
yes, exactly.
At this moment, in this world, we don't have any data before and after, typically. So they put everything together. So biological linkage, also the thing is at this moment, the last 1 or 2 decades, not concerned much. But this is the point. At least several studies say that the higher flow is associated with that, rupture status, but that even that the higher flow is before or after breving is different meaning. So that it's very hard to extract what is the underlying mechanism out of this data. But so far, my point is that kind of like this. Yeah.
Thank you. If Professor Teo would like to add something.
No, I think it's a very fascinating talk. Definitely a lot that we're learning. So remember learning about this wall shear stress during my training time over 10 years ago. And it's good to see that it's gaining momentum and certainly improving our understanding of how this contribute to the pathogenesis of aneurysm formation. It's very interesting to hear about the apoptosis theory and the thrombus formation. One thing that I was thinking about is the giant aneurysm. What is your thought on giant aneurysm? Because it's so different, right?
Okay. Can I share that? Can you see summary?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can see.
For the sake of time, I didn't discuss rupture, and this may be something answer your question. This is the human samples and the Japanese sample rupture case, like EM staining, and here the rupture point, meaning like a fresh thrombus or thing. And what I like to emphasize, here that the thicker wall, thin wall, thicker wall, thin wall, thicker wall. Here this is a fresh thrombus with solid fibrous tissues in the most layer. So that there are some parts is cracked. So the thrombus get into like penetrating like this. So say that like inflammatory cells, yes, we can observe, right? This here, or here, or here, or nothing here, nothing here, nothing here. So that a giant aneurysm, like a bigger aneurysm, more like a great variation of wall thin and wall thick. And this phenomena is totally focalized. So that remember that the wall stress are directly related with wall thickness. So that here that the wall thickness is very small, here the thick, here the big. So that the wall stress is here, what we call engineering way, wall stress is concentrated at the thinner wall because compared surrounded by a thicker wall. So this is how that the wall stress, created the like wall thinning and giant size, and because of the greater variation of wall thickness, the more probability of concentrated wall stress. Is this answering for your question? Maybe I hopefully partially.
But this opens another question for me. What is you said in your summary that a thrombus is actually protective for aneurysm rupture. That is not what we are seeing, for example, in vascular outpouchings within the brain AVM. There's often thrombus formation within the wall of these outpouchings that leads to perinidal inflammatory changes. And this is related presumably due to the thrombus leading to hypoxemia within the vessel wall and therefore to an inflammation or metalloproteinase activation within the wall that will then lead further on to the rupture. Also, we've seen in those aneurysms that have intraluminal thrombus that there's a higher likelihood of rupture. For example, in the beginning, when flow diverters were just coming out and we were putting in multiple layers of flow diverters to close off the aneurysm right away and very fast, we saw way more ruptures, and we believe this to be related to aggressive thrombus formation or inflammatory changes related to the vessel wall. So what is thrombus exactly doing to the vessel wall?
At least that all I can say is that thrombus here, I say that everything is a luminal thrombus, not inside.
Yes.
And I partially experienced that thrombus inside the wall, possibly as a big dissectional type of thing, and even that sometimes fresh thrombus inside the wall, and a lot of inflammatory cellular thing. So that the way of destruction, either only for the innermost layer or the outermost layer, depending on the destruction, then the thrombus is going different way. So that here that even I say that thrombus is very microscopic thrombus, only limited for the luminal thrombus. So which meaning only luminal part is disrupted, not inside. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Fine. If
Sorry,
I may
please.
ask one question to Professor. Yes,
Yes.
Professor Tokanabu, one question I would like to ask you regarding the continuation of what Professor Teo asked regarding the giant aneurysms. There is another theory that irrespective of any treatment, the giant aneurysm still grows because it's a disease of the vasa vasorum of the vessel wall. So even if you put whatever you do, because that's why you have this different varied layer of thickness in different portions of the aneurysms. They form their own blood supply and they become autonomous, and that's why if you imagine imaging you can see various ages of hemorrhages within that vessel wall also. So have you examined this phenomenon with regard to CFDs in your cases?
You mean that the vasovasoram?
Yes.
Not yet, not yet, not yet,
Not yet.
not yet.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
All I can say that the vasovasoram is we see some thicker wall, especially in adventure. We found that capillary network, something like that. But that there are no evidence at this moment is that this capillary layer is connecting to the medial whatever that the vasovasoram. We have no evidence at this moment. And for the thin wall, either adventure or media, I never seen kind of like a small vessel type thing. Yeah, so far.
There is one question in the chat box. If you can read that. Do you see the
Yes.
question?
So the question in the chat box is that you said on slide 26 that aneurysm wall cause blood vessels, smooth muscle cell death. Is there any study about which event triggers the event of smooth muscle cell death in aneurysm vessels?
Sorry, I forgot. Page 26?
Yes, slide 26.
Can you see the slide 26 now?
Okay.
Can you see this?
No, we can't see. You can see and answer the question, Professor, if you may.
Sorry, I missed your question. So say again, please.
It is there on the chat box. You can click on the
okay.
chat box.
Chat box.
Just in the Zoom below
Yeah,
the Zoom window.
You said aneurysmal wall cause blood vessel smooth muscle cell death. Is there any study about which event triggers the event of smooth muscle in aneurysmal vessel? Okay, and so far, one group are interested in the stretch of vascular wall in the aneurysmal study, and only one group, and what is his name? But almost 99% is don't include any effect of wall stress, wall thickness. Only look at hemodynamics. So because that the CFD is much easier for applying this thing, but wall stress, strain analysis, very difficult. So very small number of researchers are interested in this topic. Okay, but in the in vitro culture study, either endothelial cells or smooth muscle cells interested people, they put some stretch. Endothelial cells people, they only put the wall shear stress. So totally separated at this moment. But you know that this is why that endothelial cells theory being proposed so far. So the majority, but a very small number. But there exists one or two very small study about the vascular stretch. Yeah, but yeah.
If my co-host Liu Boon Singh would like to ask something.
Yeah, thanks, Raja. Thanks, Professor, for very nice talk. I would like to go back to the CFD study, Prof. Do you have any study on CFD of the blood vessel after stenting or flow diverter placement? Whether there's any more same effect on the wall shear stress on the surrounding wall? My second question, Professor, do you have also CFD study of the surrounding blood vessel after clipping or coiling? Because we have some observation in Fujita 4 years back, where we noted that the blood flow of the superior hypophyseal artery improved after clipping of the PCOM. And also we found that the non-dominant P1 have improved blood flow after clipping of the basilar top aneurysm. So do you have any CSF study of the surrounding vessel rather than just aneurysm? Because we think that by obliterating the aneurysm may improve blood brain perfusion. Thank you, Professor.
Okay, first question, you asking that the wall shear stress is that
wall shear stress on those post flow diverter placement or stent placement.
Yeah, there are compared wall shear stress in flow diverter as well as before and after, and at this moment, to my knowledge, good predictor of wall stresses hasn't yet established. Like they seemingly more correlated with not wall stress, but like more like flow velocity or flow rate or type of bulk parameters. Because the wall stress is very tricky parameters to quantify, affected very much with the local curvature. So that this is how that the wall stress is not yet, being related with association, to my understanding. Yeah, this is also the case for the rupture of growth. Yeah, it's very, like as I said previously, like two mean, like high flow and then after local bulging, again turning back to the low wall stress. So it's very hard parameters to characterize. And the second question is, I understand only 10%.
Yeah, no. Do you have any study of the cerebral CFD of the surrounding vessel rather than the aneurysm itself? Because we found that, yeah, the surrounding vessel, we found that, for example, non-dominant T1 have better blood flow after clipping of the basilar top aneurysm. So we think that obliteration of aneurysm is important. It's not only to prevent rupture, but also improve brain perfusion. Do you have such a study, Professor?
Very small, I think. Very small. And most of the studies only focus on the aneurysmal stuff, cross rupture. And the surrounding hemodynamics is not yet detailed. Because this is a simulation study. Simulation studies that has an input, man-made input, a lot of input. And simulation doesn't reproduce like a physiological network of that, brain circulation. So let's say you want to study that kind of like a physiological brain circulation, then at this moment, it's not the matter of the CFD. Like better to monitor by more like a phase contrast or also the stuff or in vivo imaging. The simulation is the simulation. So we put some boundary condition like this vessel, which amount of flow rate, this vessel, which amount of flow rate. We have to input, not output. So input is man-made. So man-made input is not necessarily meaning like physiological network. So this is probably a point why the surrounding vascular hemodynamics hasn't yet researched well.
Thank you very much. Yes, Lou, please go.
Yeah, I just want to add that I find that current CFD technology have a very limitation because it can't study a very long vessel wall. It can only study a short vessel distance. Is it right or not, Professor? I mean the distance of the vessel. Yeah, we can't study very long distance in current CFD technology that we have.
CFD itself is that we can apply for that big scale, but that CFD is very much relied on that accurate, geometrical reconstruction, like geometrical accuracy. So that currently that that angiographic 3D CT, the 0.2 or 0.4 millimeter in spatial resolution is preventing like CFD for that like a small part of the blood vessel. For the future, if that the blood vessel itself is accurately remodeled, reproduced, then might more able to use CFD with the deeper case. But not just at this moment we only look at the big case, bigger case.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you.
We can go to our chair and hear his concluding remarks, Professor Krings.
Well, I think by hearing the very active discussions and all of the questions that were asked, not only in the chat, but also from the panelists here, you can see that you hit exactly the right spot, that your research is indeed cutting edge and that we are learning a lot currently on and understand way more than we used to about the interplay of hemodynamics and the microstructure of the aneurysm, which will eventually lead to aneurysm formation and rupture. And I think we are really like in an extremely interesting time here, where our understanding is significantly increasing, and we thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, your in-depth insights, and I, for my part, can really say that I learned a lot during this presentation. So thank you very much, and with this, I will hand over to my co-chair.
Thank you very much, Professor Krings and Professor Yagito Konobu. That was a wonderful session. I would like to inform our viewers that this has been broadcasted on WeChat, YouTube, and Zoom. And thanks to Professor Shubin, right now we have around 500 people who have logged in on combined platforms. So now we'll move on to the second session. I understand Professor Krings has a posted case in the theater, so he would be leaving us. Thank you very much. So I'll hand it over to our second chair, Professor Mario Tio, who will be saying a short introduction, and invite our Honorable Professor Tamer Hassan for his lecture. Professor Tio, all yours.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be able to join this webinar. Now, the next topic is on coiling versus clipping in the era of 2023. So as we know, clipping was first done by Walter Dundee. This was over 90 years ago, in the 1930s. And coiling has been in existence for nearly 40 years. So there's certainly been a lot of change on this way we treat aneurysm. And certainly when I was going through my residency, it was after the ISAT were published. So you can see that the number of aneurysms that were being clipped just dropped significantly. And during our time of our training, we were told that, clipping is just not going to see the next decade or two. So you probably shouldn't waste your time and just go into endovascular training. But it's good to see that we have Professor Hassan, who's going to be sharing his personal wisdom on this very seemingly controversial topic in this era, which is now over 20 years after the publication of ISAT. And we look forward to his very insightful talk.
Thank you very much, Professor Teo. I'm really very happy and honored to talk today and share this with you. I will talk about aneurysms between coiling and clipping nowadays. So is coiling is better than clipping? Actually, as we all know, there is no data that is solid about which is better, coiling or clipping, up till this moment. Even all these studies that has been done has been recommended that coiling is effective, but the data about which is extremely important for the long-term results of our patients is not yet clear. Also, all the studies has been done, they didn't include the new concept of flow diversion. And it's a turning point in our management for patients with endovascular therapy. So before I discuss about the aneurysm, coiling or clipping, this paper was published in 2005. And the whole important thing that this paper summarizes that the shape of the vessel is the most important thing that defines what is the risk factor for aneurysm formation. And you see this straight vessel at the upper part of the screen. When we turn the vessel, just make a curve, the aneurysm started has more flow. And if you widen the neck, more and more flow is coming with higher velocity, as Professor Yagi said. And if we put a draining artery to the aneurysm, the flow is getting much, much higher in velocity. And you can see here also even the angle at the bifurcation makes a difference in the flow within our aneurysm. So it's important for us when we decided to treat our patient to think about what can we do to modify the parent vessel to improve the results. Like in this case, you can see this M1 aneurysm. Can you see the curvature of the artery here? I can do this case with a balloon, but I prefer to put a solitaire to straighten the vessel more and do after this coiling. And probably this is the result of this very good 10 years follow-up. So what can endovascular treatment do nowadays? Actually, it's a marvelous thing, and it's a turning point in our patients' care. We can coil simple aneurysms, like this ACOM, this MCA, And if even this small pike aneurysm can be coiled, simple coiling of a large ACOM, and this is IC bifurcation and ACOM, as you can see in your practice. Also, we can also treat difficult cases like traumatic aneurysms that was very difficult to be treated by surgery, or you even need to sacrifice the vessel with or without bypass surgery to treat. Like in this case, this patient has a bullet, and we did put two microcatheters, one at the inflow zone, one at the outflow zone, and we started to coil each separately, and then we have this very good results. This is a patient after injury with during correction of the nasal septum, and we have a traumatic aneurysm. We put some coils and we put stent, and then after 3 months we put another stent. That was at the time of the neuroform stent. Today you have a flow diverter, so you can put 1 or 2 coils and then put a flow diverter. So what are the results of endovascular treatment of aneurysms that with a mass effect? Actually, this is a very large ACOM aneurysm that we tried to do surgery, but we failed because the aneurysm was so big. We couldn't reach a safe location to clip. So the primary surgeon preferred to do this case by endovascular. I told the patient, we will coil the aneurysm for you, but we are not sure about the results of treatment. But actually the vision improves because the aneurysm arrest of the pulsation happens and the aneurysm shrink and heals after putting the coils. Even posterior communicating artery aneurysm with a mass effect, third nerve palsy improves after the endovascular treatment. And this is what I'm just said about the turning point of putting a flow diverters into our difficulty treated aneurysm with surgery. Like this case, you can see a small aneurysm here and a giant one, and with single flow diverter you can solve the patient problem, and this is the 1-year follow-up. In more difficult cases, we put 2 stents. You can see this aneurysm and this small one. We will put 1 stent flow diverter and then another flow diverting device inside to cover the neck more. And we have totally solve the problem. This patient with systemic lupus, and we did this treatment for her. Blister aneurysm that Professor Kings told us about now can be treated with flow diversion. Before that, I was trained in Japan, and I saw those patients did the high flow bypass with current vessel occlusion. Now you can treat them simply with just put a single flow diverter. But you know, the innovations comes to the endovascular treatment makes it interesting. Every year you have something new. Simple coiling, and then web, and then the flow, and then stents, and then the flow diverters and balloons and so on. But clip is the same. Do we still need clipping or not? This is the core importance of my presentation today. What are the ideal patients for treatment nowadays? So I will explain this in details later, but I believe that young patients with long life expectancy, still endovascular treatment has a % of redo surgery. And I will show our statistics at the end, but for us in our Alexandria University, we do clipping if it's easy, if it's visible, if the patient can tolerate. And for the carotid aneurysm, this is the euro ring, and we prefer to do endovascular treatment for those under the ring and for the posterior circulation, and not all of them always. So clipping has the privilege of, you will not find the word of neck remnants. Yeah, if you coil the aneurysm, you can see it in your follow-up neck remnant, and then you can follow this neck remnant for 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, and then you are happy to write staple neck remnants. But if you clip an aneurysm, it's marvelous. There is no neck remnant, and the patient's problem is totally solved. And if you do some wrapping, and this is one important thing to do besides clipping, it's very important. It's very nice to do that, and it will improve your results in the future, in the patient's future. And I believe this option for young patients, if they agree, is a very good option. Large intracerebral hematomas that needs evacuation. This young lady was awaiting the endovascular treatment of, looks simple, aneurysm for coiling, but at the night of the surgery, at the night of awaiting the endovascular treatment, she bled this massive intracerebral hematoma. So we went there and evacuated the hematoma and put a clip. And when we followed up this patient after one year, we find the neck remnant is growing. So we put a flow diverter. So we did a redo surgery for her. Small aneurysms. I believe endovascular treatment is difficult in small aneurysms. You need to put something in the parent vessel itself. You need to put a stent. You need to support with balloon, and these things has its own complications. Of course, we can do that, but clipping is, I think it's easy for small aneurysm rather than coiling if you can reach the aneurysm safely. It's the same story also for wide neck aneurysms. And if you clip wide neck aneurysm, please be parallel to the parent vessel, because not to avoid the dog ear. Like in this case, this is 30 years old with MC bifurcation. How to do this endovascular? You need to put stent here or double balloon, or you need to put microcatheter in this vessel and then a stent in this vessel and then start to coil. And you may have a thrombus at the bifurcation. You can just open, clip, evacuate the subarachnoid hemorrhage and do some wrapping, and the results are very nice. How can we treat this by endovascular treatment? It's very difficult to navigate the upper trunk and lower trunk of that aneurysm. You will go with a microcatheter in this circle, and then you stay a lot of time to turning around and to find your way to navigate the aneurysm to put stent or whatever. And I believe that surgical treatment still is of value in such case. Another patient with giant MC bifurcation aneurysm that I believe it's easier to do with clipping than to do with endovascular treatment, reconstructive surgery with several clips. What if endovascular treatment has a complication? And it's possible, of course, like in this case, the endovascular surgeon put the solitaire. You can see the 3 dots here. And you can see here the single lot of solitaire. It's a quite long one. Maybe he couldn't find. I don't know what happened. He stretched the vessel, so we have temporal intracerebral hematoma after the procedure. And he couldn't fill this part of the aneurysm, the outflow zone. He just put coils here in the inflow zone of that aneurysm. So we went there and we evacuated the hematoma, and we put a clip on the outflow zone, and we wrapped the aneurysm, as you can see here in this image. I didn't take the coils out because I was afraid to put a temporary clip on the MCA because there is stent inside. Maybe the artery is injured or the stent is broken. So I just did a clipping of the remaining parts. What to do for a case like this? It's very difficult to navigate all the way to put a stent, maybe with the, I don't know, the dual catheters, but we don't have. And it's difficult to do selective coiling of the spica. As you can see, the artery is too small. So what we did in this case is, I will show you. So the video is long. So we did a enough lateral approach. We drilled part of the condyle, opening the dura. You can see the aneurysm around here. I'm trying to find long wave pica. This is the vertebral artery, and this is the pica. And this is the accessory. We have to cut the pica from here, transpose the pica in front of the accessory, and then getting some length from the pica around distal part. After we excise the aneurysm, we will connect this pica to the other part. And that was the first option. The second option is to do occipital artery pica anastomosis if we couldn't do this first option. Of course, I would love to clip, but I found that it's very difficult to do the clipping. Okay, now we will start to do the anastomosis. Now the vessel is transposed. I'm now cutting the pica from the artery. Okay, And then we will excise the aneurysm totally. Then we will clean the vessel with heparin and then start to do our anastomosis after putting methylene blue. And you can see the aneurysm is totally excised. And then you can see the aneurysm is okay. We will do now the removal of the distal clip, but we have some flow. Maybe we need one more stitch. Okay, the stitch is done. And this is our final results after taking out the aneurysm and do pica to end-to-end anastomosis. What if the endovascular treatment fails? There are many reports in the literature about the failure of endovascular treatment, even after you do coiling with the aneurysm. You have percent of the patient that has a hemorrhage again. And that was one of the strange cases. I don't understand what happened. That was ACOM aneurysm that has subarachnoid. We put 4 coils. It's very nice occlusion of the aneurysm. But 48 hours after the treatment, we have this intercerebral hematoma. What was done is that we opened the patient immediately and evacuate the hematoma and take the coils out, and we put two reconstructive clips, as you can see here in the image. Aneurysm with mass effect is debatable, as I mentioned at the beginning, but I still believe that, although I believe that endovascular treatment has a percent of correction of the mass effect after treatment, but still the surgically treated aneurysm has a faster correction of the mass effect problem, faster correction of vision, faster recovery and complete recovery of third nerve palsy, especially in those patients with upward gaze palsy. What about aneurysm retreatment? And this is the core part of our presentation. Do we need to follow our patient after clipping? I believe the answer is yes. So what could make the surgical clipping bad? The anesthesia is an important thing. You need to work with an excellent neuroanesthesiologist. The anatomy may be difficult, and the clip variabilities, maybe if you are not in a good center, you don't have all the clips. And if you have a premature aneurysm rupture, this will change all your plans. Those patients did clipping, but after when you did angio, we found remaining part of the aneurysm. As you can see here, we did coiling of the remaining part. So it's coiling after clipping. Another patient with posterior communicating aneurysm, as you can see, and anterior communicating, I'm sorry, we did clip, patient did very well. And when we did follow up after 1 year, we find this neck remnant, dog ear. We just put 1 coil. So again, it's coiling after clipping. What about treatment? What about retreatment after endovascular coiling? This means more coil, more stents, and flow diversion. As I told you, neck remnant is always one constant thing that was written in the reports after the coiling. And maybe after flow diversion, we don't find this neck remnant if it's growing, but many people follow up their growing neck remnants after simple aneurysm coiling. This blister was treated by flow diversion. In this case, 1 year after, we found this is the blister you saw in the previous image made up this aneurysm that we did coil, and then after another follow-up, the blister grow again, and we have more remaining part of the aneurysm. So maybe this patient will, after 1 year from now, we will do flow diversion for him, but we are following this blister up to this moment. This is another case with basilar giant aneurysm trunk. We did very good coiling at the beginning, and then we have an inflow zone growth. We put stents, and then we fill the inflow zone, and the patient did well. So if we are treating patients from their pockets, you will have a problem with financial limitation of the material, and especially if complication happen during the procedure, like need to do mechanical thrombectomy, there is a thrombus coming out from the guiding catheter. And if the patient are paying by themselves, that's a big problem. But if not, the insurance coverage is okay. But generally, the redo procedure means coils, more stents, and more cost, of course. So among the statistics of our patients, we collected the patients done in 2 years. We have 274 clip, 665 coils, and you can see the coils are more than coiling is more than clipping. We have 2.6% retreated after clipping with 0 rebleeding, and we have 12% retreated after with 6.2% rebleeding late and early. And as I told you, stable neck remnant in about half of the patients. So endovascular treatments carried definite risk of rebleeding higher than surgery. And the residual neck or aneurysm filling is significantly evident in endovascular treatment aneurysms compared to surgery. There is technical superiority of surgery that we should advise our patients to do before the procedure. And I don't have a definite conclusion which is better, coiling or clipping. There is no randomized study, but I think every patient is ruled by himself, and we should treat case by case. Not clipping is better for some patients, coiling is better for the others, and there must be the two subspecialties cooperating together, or hybrid physician that can do surgery and endovascular is a very good thing to find also in some institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hassan. That's a very good talk. And certainly by the sound of the presentation, you are a very well-accomplished, dual-trained vascular neurosurgeon. And I don't think I personally know yourself, but just judging from the presentation, sounds like you trained in Japan and then probably did some vascular training in Egypt. This is my assumption. The question is, you know, to get to your level of competency with your slide that you show, whereby you do about 30% open surgical cases and 70% endovascular, and that seems like a good kind of mix. But in places like the UK, whereby we are very heavy on endovascular treatment, the cases are more over 90% being endovascularly treated. So it's always been very difficult to train people to become dual trained. What would be your advice for the future generation and how to establish this?
Well, in Japan, neurosurgeons do the endovascular treatment, and also neurosurgeons do the clipping. So that's the reason I was trained there. I spent there 5 years or something, and I did a PhD and Japanese board. And after that, when I went to Egypt in 2005, we started to build our hybrid neurosurgery department. So we have many people now working, doing both surgery and endovascular. Some people are doing endovascular clipping, endovascular coiling only, and others are doing clipping only, but we have many people doing both. So actually you are following the Japanese school, not it's not something I did. But I believe that what is fascinating is that probably I am referring to the training points, our training directions of my mentors that was when I was in Japan before. But endovascular is changing every year. So you have 1 year with Onyx, and then next you have another material, and then you have a flow diverter, and then you have pipeline 1, they have pipeline 2. So it's changing every year. So of course it's not fair to compare surgical clipping to endovascular advancement of materials. It's changing every day. So what I advise, if you want to be a perfect neurosurgeon, it's very good for the patients to have a decision that doesn't have any kind of debate, and you're trying to do the best for him. We have one of our patients with a collagen disease that he has developed joint aneurysm. We did bypass, and then after treatment, the bypass itself turned it into another aneurysm. We did balloon occlusion test for the bypass, and then we included the bypass. And after that, we have a new AC aneurysm, and then another. We did nothing. It's spontaneous occlusion, and then he has a new PC aneurysm. We did flow diversion. So this patient in a single department was treated by several methods, and I think this is very good. This is very good to have a decision that is out of debate.
Yeah. So can I also ask a couple of other things? So the first one is about neck remnant. So with regards to aneurysm that are endovascularly treated, no matter which technique you use, you know, whether you do simple coiling, you put a web device in, a contour, you know, the rate of residual or recurrence is pretty similar, no matter how I look at it, it's 20 to 30%. And what is your threshold in terms of trying to retreat them? Because I know some people in our practice, for example, they say, oh, it's a tiny little remnant, monitored for 3-4 years, is stable, therefore discharge. Is that a practice that you follow, or do you?
Yes. Actually, yes. I said that neck remnant you find always after treatment. We don't have web. We just have coils, simple or balloon assisted, or sometimes stent assisted. But we stopped with stent assisted. We put now flow diversion. We follow the neck remnants for 1, 2, 3 years. If it's growing, all we retreat.
But what about
treat all neck remnants?
Yeah. So what is your view on? There are certainly, I think, in Japanese literature that suggests that the neck remnant is like a small aneurysm. So if you follow them long enough, a portion of them could change. Like, why do you think 3 years is sufficient to monitor a small aneurysm? Because nowadays we monitor a lot of sub 7 millimeter aneurysm for potential change or growth, and this is one of the things that we are working on.
Yes, but we never open a patient with neck remnants and find that the patient bled from their neck. Maybe a small aneurysm could be a blister, like what Professor Fugawa has mentioned in General Neurosurgery several years ago. But over-treatment of neck remnants has sometimes complication. We follow those patients. If the neck remnants grow significantly and you feel that it's risky to leave the patient, then we retreat.
Okay. Can I also ask one last thing? So it's about posterior circulation giant aneurysm. You showed an example of that. So you showed the example where you put in a stent and then coiling. So what about a mass effect? There's a lot of the posterior compartment is a small compartment anyway. So if you have a lot of coil mass in there, what is your view on the brainstem compression from all the coils and the swellings of the effect of endovascular treatment for posterior?
Yes, this is very important question. If you can occlude the basilar artery itself, that is the best solution. But you need to study very well the collaterals, the PCOMs, the one vertebral or two. So we have a patient with basilar trunk aneurysm that we did basilar artery occlusion and intra-aneurysmal occlusion at the same time. And we put in this patient 26 coils. This patient did very well. Occlusion of the parent artery is the best solution to solve the post-operative mass effect. But if you don't, surgery on the other hand is very difficult to do, and clipping is very difficult to do. So we treat the patient by coiling and sometimes with flow diverters. It's case by case. There is no general answer I can give you about that. But we have a patient, several cases with basilar artery occlusion that did very well.
Good. Yeah. No, I think there is a question from the Q&A section that talks about pica anastomosis. How much time do you take for
this case took about 3 hours.
Yeah,
this case took around 3 hours.
But the ischemic time of the temporal occlusion, I think that's what it meant.
Oh, that's also another thing. After we put the clips, we put Doppler to see if the patient, how is the collateral circulation is doing. In this case, we found that very good collaterals. So usually there is collaterals coming from the ICA and superior cerebellar artery that can give you some time to do the anastomosis. And generally in the anastomosis, it's better to do as distal as possible. Of course, if you are doing monoamine disease, don't use the M1 or M2, use M3 or M4 branches. That is good because of the collateral, so you take your time without any risk to do the anastomosis. But in this pica, after putting the Doppler, I found very good retrograde flow. So I was working comfortably and took 3 hours from skin to skin.
Good, very good. So I think there's a very important point about the surgical armamentarium of having the bypass under your sleeve, because not all aneurysms can be safely clip reconstructed, or I think in some cases, the bypass is a very, very good option. So I certainly believe that the young generation or the future generation of vascular neurosurgeon needs to have the bypass under the belt It's a very good skill set, especially for this sort of complex aneurysms. And
Exactly.
it's a wonderful talk. I just want to see if there is other co-chairs have any questions.
It's a great presentation, Professor. I think that you are right. There's not much of evolution in the cryptology that we have, but definitely coiling making a move. Only one question that I think Prof. Raja have brought out regarding the possibility of aneurysm formation due to vasa vasorum, where it's over the surface of the vessel. Hence, there are some cases they're looking at why coiling fail because the growth of aneurysm actually from the outer wall rather than from the inner wall. So in those cases, Prof. Hassan, do you think that the clippings still have some role to play where we treat the outer vessel wall than the inner vessel wall?
Yes, joint aneurysms. We have a paper published in Neurosurgical Review several years ago that we prefer to occlude the parent vessel to treat joint aneurysms, with or without bypass, of course. But this concept changed recently, putting the flow diverters. And we have some problem with flow diversion because we have a percent of some patients that bled after putting the flow diverters. So we changed our policy, putting few coils, and then we confronted with a problem with mass effect of the few coils and flow diversion. But still, we love to occlude the vessel from the beginning. It's very, very nice treatment of the patient. But we have also a problem if you occlude the vessel in a young patient that you may have an ACONF aneurysm at this patient's future. So there is no definite solution of this. You have to treat case by case depending on the patient's age, and you have to put all the possibilities in front of you.
Thank you, Professor.
Professor Teo, we can hear your concluding remarks.
So no, thank you, Professor Hassan. It's a very insightful talk and certainly very knowledgeable and lots of experience you can hear from the slides that he presented and all the wonderful things that he has shown. So certainly we have quite a few neurosurgeons or neurosurgical trainees from Egypt here in the UK, and I think UK, the dual training is not quite as mature as the United States and Japan, for example. So I believe that to be a very successful or good vascular neurosurgeon, then the dual training is the way forward. And it's just trying to figure out where to get the training required. And I think if Japan or America is the place to go, then so be it, just equip yourself with all the knowledge and skills that you require in order to manage this complex pathology. And then you will get a balanced view on how best to treat that particular aneurysm rather than, the ego that one have when you are purely endovascular or purely open surgical. Then you have the kind of mindset where you want to treat that particular aneurysm in a particular way. I certainly believe that dual training is a good way forward, and you get a very balanced view. And thank you for the invitation, and certainly have a good weekend.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was indeed a wonderful session by Professor Tamer Hassan, and thanks Professor Teo for chairing. And I would like to close this officially now on behalf of the Education Committee of the ACNS and the President, Professor Yoko Kaito. I would like to thank both the speakers of today, Professor Yagi Tokanabu and Professor Tamer Hassan, as well as the chairs, Professor Timo Krings and Professor Mario Teo, for the time and support for the ACNS webinars. A special thanks to my co-host Dubun Cheng for joining me today, and also Professor Shubin for broadcasting this webinar on the WeChat channel. And as of before, I mentioned that we have around 500 people who have logged in to view this wonderful webinar. So until we all meet online tomorrow, it is bye-bye from all of us. Thank you very much for joining.